Alright, number 8. Now we have changed gears. We're still doing linear equations, but this is an absolute value equation. So these are going to be a little bit different, and you have to be careful when you're solving absolute values. So I'm going to show you how absolute values work. So when you have an absolute value problem, the first thing you want to do is isolate that absolute value expression so the absolute value is on one side of the equal sign by itself. So absolute value bar, and then we have 14y plus 8, closed absolute value, and then we have an additional plus 8 outside, and then that is equal to 2. Okay, so this problem isn't in a setup that we can solve it yet because we have absolute value and this plus 8 on the same side of the equal sign. So I need to get rid of this plus 8 to isolate this. So I'm going to add 8, or actually subtract 8 to move it over. Minus 8 minus 8. Alright, so I'm going to bring down the absolute value expression. So absolute value of 14y plus 8 is now equal to, this 8 cancels out, and we have 2 minus 8 is going to give us a negative 6. Okay, so now it's in a setup that we can solve. Absolute values by itself, and then we have a number. Now here's the problem. Whenever you have an absolute value, you have to solve the problem twice. Okay, you also need to be familiar with what absolute value does. Okay, so if you don't know, absolute value will change a negative to a positive. So if I had, like, if my answer came out to be negative 4, that's going to be equal to 4. If my value was already positive, absolute value is not going to do anything. It's going to leave it positive. So when you do absolute value, notice what happens. It always comes out positive. Okay, it's never going to be negative. Like, if it's negative here, whenever you evaluate it, it's going to be positive. So the fact that when I simplify my absolute value, it's showing me a negative number, that means that this is not going to work. There's not going to be a solution here from the beginning. Now, we can still try to solve it, and I can show you that there's going to be no solution, but I'm just going to say, just take my word for it right now to save you some time so we can do a few more examples. But notice that if the start, when you begin to work the problem, when you get it into a solvable situation where your absolute value is on one side and the numbers on the other side, and you see that it's equal to negative, no solution. It's not going to work. Okay? So even if you solve it and get an answer, when you go back and plug it in, it's not going to come out true. So anyway, this is just part of the problem solving process. But in this case, we're going to get no solution. Generally, you will get 2 solutions, but in this case, we're going to get no solution. So, with number 9, we actually be able to solve this one. Hopefully, looks like it will. And let's solve this. Okay, so number 9. We have 2 absolute value expressions. Both of them are isolated, which is good. So we have absolute value of 5x minus 8. And then on the other side, we have equal absolute value of 4x plus 8. Okay, so here is how you solve absolute value problems. Remember how we just mentioned that if you have a negative, it comes out positive. And if you have a positive, it comes out positive. That's exactly what you have to do when you solve these problems. You don't have to do it 4 times because it's going to be the same end result, but you have to do it twice. So what I mean is, once you have the absolute values isolated, you're going to drop them and set them equal to each other, like leave it positive, and then on the next one, we're going to change one of them negative. Okay, because if you change both negative, negative times a negative is a positive, it's like doing the same thing. So you're going to set one of them positive and leave the other one, and you're going to set one of them negative and leave the other one. That's pretty much how you solve absolute value. and you're going to get two answers. You're going to solve it twice. So for the first time, I'm going to write 5x minus 8 equals, and I'm going to leave it positive. I'm doing this case right here. Is equal to 4x plus 8. Okay, so 5x minus 8, 4x plus 8. That's one scenario. And then we have another scenario where I'm going to make one of them negative. I'm just going to make the right side negative. I'm going to leave this side positive. So I'm going to write 5x minus 8, and then equals, we're going to say, so if you put a negative here and you distribute negative, both of these things are going to change signs. So it's going to be a negative 4x minus 8. Okay, so understand this. I had two terms, and I changed their signs. Now, change their signs doesn't mean that they're always going to be negative. So if this was already negative and I changed the sign, it would then become positive. So just be aware that it's not exactly going to be negative unless it's just one number. Okay, so I'm going to solve both of these problems simultaneously. I'm going to add 8 to both sides. I'm going to do that for both equations. So 8 goes to 0, bring down 5x equals, bring down 4x plus 16. And then on this side, that's going to go to 0, bring down 5x equals a negative 4x, and that's going to be 0 as well. So in this case now, I'm going to move the 4x's over. This time I have to subtract 4x because it is positive. And on here I have to add 4x because it was negative. So this guy's going to cancel out and just leave us with 0 on that side. This is going to come down and just leave us 4 plus 5 is going to give us 9x. Alright, over here goes to 0. 5 minus 4 is going to give us just 1x equals 16. So here's one solution. X equals 16. And then over here when we divide by 9, we get that x equals 0 divided by 9 is 0. You can put 0 on the top, but you cannot put 0 on the bottom. Remember that. So we get 16 and 9. Now, when you get these answers, it's very possible that they may not work, so you always want to go back and double check. So if we go back and plug in the 0 and the 16, we can see if these work out. So always check your work. I haven't been, but you always want to see if you've done it right. So I'm going to check them both, and then we're going to move on. So 5, I'm putting an absolute value, times 0 minus 8 is equal to 4, absolute value of 4 times 0 plus 8. Okay, so 5 times 0 is 0, minus 8 is going to give us absolute value of negative 8. Over here, 4 times 0 is 0, plus 8 is going to give us the absolute value of 8. Okay, so right now they look different, but when you evaluate absolute value, what does absolute value do? It changes it negative to a positive. So this is just 8, and this is just 8. So 8 equals 8, so 0 works. That checks out. That's one solution. All right, let's try it with 16. So absolute value of 5 times 16 minus 8. I want to keep putting the parentheses. I need to put the absolute value bar. And then 4 times 16 plus 8. Alright, so 5 times 16 is going to give us 90. Nope, 80. 5 times 6 is 30. And 50 is 80 minus 8. So we have the absolute value of 80 minus 8, which would give us 72. And then 4 times 16, 4 times 6 is 24. And then 60, 70, nope, 24, 64. So over here we have 64 plus 8. 64 plus 8 is also 72. So absolute value 72 and 72 just gives us 72 equals 72. Okay, so they both check out. 16 worked and 0 worked. So our answers are 0 and 16. We got 2 solutions. And that's most common for absolute value problems. 0 and 16. It doesn't matter what order you put them in as long as you get them both.